Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the sixth panel discussion of Day 2, Market Access in ASEAN, Surfing the Rising Tide of Southeast Asia's Digital Economy. Without further ado, we'd like to call upon our moderator for this session, Mr. Khoo Chuang, Managing Director of KHC Ventures Sendirian Berhad and Do More Malaysia. Now, he will be introducing our speakers. Chuang, the floor is yours.
Okay, Brian, thanks for your introduction. Very kind of you. We have on the panel with us Sudev Bangah. He's the Managing Director of IDC ASEAN, based out of Indonesia. We've also got Johary Mustapha, the founder and CEO of Forest Interactive in Malaysia. We've got Siong, the Vice President for Malaysia Cloud and AI Business Group for Huawei Technologies in Malaysia. And we've also got Meng, the Director of Delmia Quintic GDC Services on behalf of Dassault Systems, also for Malaysia. Now let's discuss this whole issue about ASEAN, because we know that ASEAN is a market comprising a 10-member regional bloc. It's a combined GDP of $2.8 trillion, population 650 million people, sizable. And we've also seen how the pandemic has seen ASEAN as a collective economic bloc, overtaking the European Union and the US as China's largest trading partner. This data happened just recently, in fact, just in the first quarter of this year. So I'd like to ask the first question of Sudev. Sudev, what exactly is the size of the ASEAN digital market? And also let's have a point of view on Malaysia as well, since we are comparatively one of the wealthiest countries in the region.
All right, so thank you, Chuang, and a good afternoon to everyone, and to my fellow panelists as well. It's great to be here with a whole bunch of experts as always. So I guess if you want to talk about the size from digital perspective, if you take the big five, you plus Vietnam in, $120 billion in terms of ICT spending. Singapore's a little bit of a skew on its own. It's about $20 billion in IT as well as communication spending. But if you look at Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam, that's circa about $100 billion in spending. We do anticipate this to contract by the end of this year. It's trending in that sense that it's going to contract by 4%. But the good news is this: if we've been taking a pulse of the market every 2 weeks since January till now, ever since we heard about the pandemic, ever since we heard about the lockdowns, and we've been looking at the confidence of ASEAN countries and organizations in ASEAN starting to really increase. In fact, our latest statistic shows that 75% of ASEAN organizations are optimistic about the future, optimistic about 2021, and they're starting to park their investments into, I guess, what can be called targeted investments of artificial intelligence, as well as cloud-based platform, security services, IoT, AI. So these are areas that we see is growing really quickly in ASEAN. And again, the confidence level is coming back. And when we look at the spending, we anticipate moving into 2021 is going to be fairly accelerated in very pinpoint specific digital transformation projects.
Okay, well, it's obvious that ASEAN is one of the sexiest places in the world to do business. Everybody wants to be in this part of the region. It's an emerging market, growing really fast. Dassault Systems is one of the top 10 enterprise software companies in the world. You're one of the world's biggest. You see a big acceleration in the market, right? Where exactly?
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, we're all focused on the pandemic right now and how it is, damaging the business. But if we take a step back and we zoom out, right, there has been already some sort of acceleration in recent years, especially in the area of digital transformation, in automation, as Sudev has mentioned, in AI. Our government has been very supportive of the move towards Industry 4.0. And just to add to that, there is also, because of the pandemic, a big surge in demand and in the logistics and distribution area. So, I mean, while we're all focused on the pandemic, I just want us all to take a step back. This is where the acceleration is in the market. That's what we have observed in the market.
Okay, well, let's get a bit more flesh on that bone, if you can, Thai. You said a lot of big things and a lot of big concepts, but can you zone in on what particular mega trend that you're seeing in terms of where Malaysia is growing?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? It's always very broad. I would like to break it down into two areas. The areas that are actually doing very well, and the areas that is let me say, in my words, require transformation. The areas that are doing very well, as I mentioned, logistics, distribution, online retail is booming. There's a lot of platform work that's going on. The public sectors are, it's a mixed bag there, but there's a big push towards there. And at the same time, if you look at the manufacturing side of things, the more traditional industries, right? There has already been a requirement to transform, a requirement to automate, a requirement to adapt to the evolution that's happening around the world. And even though there's a bit of a downturn, it feels like a bit of downturn, there's many manufacturing companies in the respective industries are already investing in, while the workload is low right now, they're actually investing into this area.
Okay, let's move on to Chee Siong, right? Chee Siong, Huawei is one of the biggest dogs in the room right now. I think on average, you serve one of every maybe 2 people in the world, okay? Some of your products, your networks, your infrastructure, your cloud services, your software is quite far-reaching, and it's achieved this in a very short space of time, relatively speaking. Where are you seeing your focus areas and opportunities in this part of the world?
Yeah, I think ASEAN being one of the dynamic and high growth area in the world. So we see that I mean, during this pandemic period, so they are increasing. I mean, take Huawei as an example. So our revenue in the first half are still growing more than 10%. We foresee that even in the full years, we're still growing at more than 10%. So I think that shows that the technology players actually benefit from this pandemic. So because the whole COVID-19 actually accelerated the digital transformation. So we see that very strongly in the ASEAN market, especially in Malaysia. So because we have been serving Malaysia in terms of the mobile network, the fixed network, the devices, and now starting this year, we are serving Malaysia from our cloud AI services. So we are actually delivering so-called quite a wide portfolio of the digital solution that can support our customer and partners as much as possible. And we see a very strong traction, whether you are a small company, even an individual as a developer, or all the way from SME to the large enterprise. So many of the clients that we've been engaging with, so they are very keen in exploring, and they are so keen in finding out what digital solution can benefit them and to help them to overcome the challenges of during this period of pandemic. And so they are so eager to find out what are the solutions that can support them. So I think that gives us, not just from a supplier itself, but the entire ecosystem. It will benefit the entire ecosystem. So just take an example. We have one client called Hexa. So Hexa is a very traditional food producer. They produce chili sauce. So when we engage them during beginning of the year before the COVID-19, so we are exploring about how to use the cloud AI and IoT technology to transform themselves. So they're actually setting up a subsidiary called Hexa IoT. So they use cloud technology, they use AI, they use IoT technology to transform their dry chili sauce, raw material sourcing line from a manual. You have to hire a lot of workers to actually manually pick up which dry chili that's bad. So you have to filter it out. But as long as when they use the latest technology, they can use just one camera and a robotic arm, so they can using the AI to rectify those that is bad, and then they filter it out. So with that, using a minimal investment in terms of the technology, so the whole factory line actually transformed into a labor-intensive factory into a less labor-intensive and more automatic production line. So we're using just all the latest technology. So I think that is a good example showing that Hexa is an SME category anyway, right? They can transform using the technologies, and now they will position themselves. They are no longer just a traditional food producer company, but now they are also becoming an IT company. They can also doing some IT consulting to other SME. So this is what we say that when we want to stimulate the economy, is local SME for the SME using the latest technology.
Okay, so Chee Siong, very, very quickly, okay, because what we know about the pandemic in the last 6 months is that a lot of SMEs ask the government for assistance to help them digitize and get out of the downturn. Okay, what is the size of the SME opportunity in Malaysia according to your market intelligence?
I think we are seeing SME from quite a wide range, because when government would like to subsidize for the SME, it's best that we subsidize the investment to help the SME to transform, not just about receiving the loan to overcome the challenges period, but to encourage them to invest and to use the latest technologies, to be on board to the digital. And with this kind of solution, I think it will help our all level of SME.
Okay, Johary, I think do your close friends call you Joe or Johary?
Yeah, Joe is good.
Okay, so Joe, I mean, you are also software, okay, but you're quite cool in the sense that you do both B2B and B2C, and you're also involved in esports, okay, so that in itself sets you apart from all these other boring fellas, right? What is your sense of the opportunity in this huge ASEAN market?
Well, to be honest, in that ASEAN is a very attractive market, but then very unique. We all know about 11 countries having 10 or 11 countries having population of about 670 million. So it's quite a very different market. We look at the market access of ASEAN. It could also be an ideal environment for like what we do, publishing games or gaming, and also that we've seen a lot of foreign companies as well invest in this space. And if you look at the potential of gaming in Southeast Asia, last year we've seen about 3 billion in terms of mobile payments on games. That's at 17.4% year-on-year increase. We see PC at 1 billion. And a small portion for console at 0.4 billion. So there's a total about 4.3 billion of revenues just on mobile games itself. So I think even though the market is rather fragmented in each of the different countries, because you have a different unique culture, different language, it's always how you piece them together to get the best value in terms of how do you convert non-paying users to actually wanting to pay, especially during this post-COVID-19 time. So we've seen a lot of growth, especially with the digital adoption in all these countries. So you got a lot more people who were used to the traditional way of, say, paying, off-site, over the counter now. They got their own data. They're now more educated in terms of how they want to make a payment, and it's more simplified. So I guess education is key, and we've seen a really fast growth on people understanding technology and how to use this to make their purchases.
So the anecdotal evidence that Chee, Siong and Tai and Joe have put forth, does it tie in with your data and your research? I mean, I know you do fortnightly updates, but does it correspond? And do you need to reconcile what you have found out versus what they've just said?
Oh, it's a good question. It does reconcile. I'm glad about that, by the way. It shows a bit of credibility in what we do. But jokes aside, it's really, honestly, if you were to cut the landscape, whether Malaysia or ASEAN, into two halves, you would have seen a very different picture. I mean, the first half of it was very much around business continuity and cost optimization. Every organization was banging on that. Every organization was trying to figure out how to survive. A lot of them had to readapt to a virtual environment such as this. And honestly, majority of them didn't even have company provision laptops for them to be able to do this. We found organizations who couldn't do simplistic things such as procurement or administration or finance. They were not on the cloud. And all of a sudden now we hit all the way to July, and everybody realized it's going to be slightly prolonged. All these investments are starting to accelerate. And what we call during the economic recovery, is hopefully going to trend towards targeted investments and what is called a future enterprise. So that trend is very prominent. Tai brought up a very good point around manufacturing, logistics, distribution. There's such a heightened increase in interest around ecosystem value chains. There's a heightened increase around brand-oriented value chains and even technology as a service value chains at this point in time. You talk about Johary talking about consumerism and how majority of consumers are going to have to transport themselves into a more virtual environment. Countries are introducing e-payments. Cash payments are no longer the thing right now. You look at Malaysia itself, e-payments is really the way to go, cashless payments. And talk about Siong around analytics, AI, and the cloud as a platform. Larger enterprises are all doing that right now because they just simply do not want to be caught out again.
Yeah, so ASEAN it looks nice from afar, but when you zone in, there's only a few kind of like viable economies or country economies for the Dassaults and the Huaweis of this world to set up, right? And let's take a look at Malaysia in particular, because I mean we're based here, right, Kuala Lumpur, right? So maybe with Chee Siong first, right? From Huawei's standpoint, you have said that you like the human capital here in terms of their digital readiness. But then we in the workforce, and then we among the population, we see that our education system could be a lot better, right? So there seems to be a disconnect between what we at the ground level feel is the qualifiability of our people, but then you seem to disagree. Can you try and reconcile some of those two conflicting opinions?
Yeah. So Huawei is recently doing a white paper research together with MTech and Ernst & Young. So we are in the midst of going to release white paper. So the title of that white paper is to position Malaysia as ASEAN digital capital. So I mean, Malaysia, as we used to be having a very good foundation, but looking at our multicultural and talents and so on. So I think we have that very good foundation. So what we need to do now is having a vision to bring Malaysia digital economy into the next level. So this is what this white paper is all about. So the reason for Malaysia, when it becoming ASEAN digital capital, so we are looking at creating an incremental 1.8 trillion ringgit and creating incremental 1.5 million of jobs. So that is the outcome that we wish to achieve when we reach that vision. And to support this, we need a very systematic approach rather than going by either one public sector or private sectors. So we need to gel and doing all together in a more systematic way. So there are 5 major pillars that we have found out in this white paper. So the first and very important is we must have a foundation of good digital infrastructures. So that digital infrastructure is not just a broadband. We are talking about a broadband connectivity that would include 5G very soon. We are talking about a local cloud platform as an important infrastructures and many other factors. So a good digital infrastructure is the foundation of everything. Because whether we are talking about cashless e-payments, we are talking about digital transformation, we are talking about all the new services to be delivered. Without a good digital infrastructure, nothing can be happen. So this is the lesson learned what China is doing for the past 5 years. They build all the broadband infrastructures, they build all the cloud everywhere, they have the AI centers to serve all the government agencies. That is the infrastructure layout that they put on place so that all the application and ecosystem can be grown on top of this infra. So the very first and important is we need to have a good digital infrastructure to support us. So the second major pillar is the talents, as what you had mentioned. So we need to also have good talents that know how to run the whole things. So talent, we have a very good foundation, but we just need to be more specific in training more good people, good talents, to know how to operate and run and to grow the digital economy.
Okay,
so and the third
go on.
So the third pillar is the ecosystem, which is very, very important. I think when we talk about ecosystem, we're trying to avoid that. We should bring some good partners from overseas. Yes, I mean, Huawei also, we are origin from China. We are not a Malaysian company, but we can tap on the hyperscaler company in terms of technologies. More importantly is how to grow our local economies is through our local players. So how to build a local ecosystem is very strategic in order to grow our Malaysian digital economy. Then another two factors will be the security side as well as the ultimate goal of the digital economy. I can explain more details about this later on.
Of course. So from Dassault's point of view, Thai, I know you're a reasonably recent entrant to Malaysia, and you've selected Kuala Lumpur as a regional hub. I'm sure you also agree with what Siong was saying, but there's also other issues, right? I think you mentioned the time zone.
Yeah. So
yeah.
So I fully agree with Chee. I mean, from the step zero, the basis is infrastructure and talent. Without these two things, we cannot even start. And so the infrastructure. So Dassault Systems, we started here Quintic as an office in Malaysia back in 2006, and the reason we chose that was exactly because the infrastructure was pretty good back then. There was a very strong talent pool, especially in the universities, right? So we've worked through that in the past 14 years. And I agree with Chee Siong that when the infrastructure becomes better, there's a lot more we can do, a lot more productivity. We just become more productive. And with the talent pool, the thing is we are very smart people. Really, the workforce in Malaysia is excellent. The intelligence is there, the passion is there, the enthusiasm is there. I think what can be better is maybe the exposure, the industry exposure, the function exposure, the business exposure. I think that's the part that if we could kind of leverage that on the learning side, that would really make us a top spot on the world stage. What is interesting, if you look at it just from a pure geography, and that's actually the reason why we started office here in Kuala Lumpur, is there's a time zone advantage. For Dassault Systems, we have strong businesses in Americas and Europe, right? And Malaysia is just between the two time zones, and that means so much for all kinds of things. For example, from a project standpoint, right? The customer can raise an issue in Europe or Americas before they log off, and then the next morning when they wake up, it's solved because we wake up and we work, and that creates this 24/7 machine going. It's really nice, you know, and our customers really appreciate it. The other area is our geography. If you look at just the APAC region, let's just focus on the APAC region, and just go to the map and look at where Malaysia is. We are right in the middle of the APAC region, and that makes us, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, a perfect location for a regional hub, and that is for the reason that the Kuala Lumpur office for the Dassault System is the regional hub for financial services, for marketing, for all kinds of things.
Yeah, so I want to put this question to Joe, right? What is the role of enablers like MDEC and other government agencies to accelerate the digital economy? Is this a big assistance in terms of getting this whole acceleration on track due to the pandemic?
Oh, that's a good question. Having MDEC or any of these agencies in Malaysia, I mean, it's a big advantage to local companies such as us. You know, I remember going through different parts of the region, and you know, the concept of having grant or even assistance from the government was really alien to them. Now, this has catapulted, boosted a lot of local companies. They see growth as a very contributing factor to you know, really being a regional company instead of being local. And there's a lot of programs as well that has been developed. So it's very important that these companies be part of that ecosystem, because originally you don't really understand what's going on in the ecosystem if you're out of it. Once you get into it, so for example, MDEC, it organizes a lot of these events. You then start to see what everyone does, understand, you know, who's doing what, and then from there, try to be unique in terms of, okay, this is my product, this is my core specialty, and this is how I look at growth. And then also, how do you look at fulfilling the demand of what people want out there? So I think being in most parts of Southeast Asia, Malaysia is one of the most active in terms of government agencies promoting businesses out. And with all this different wide array of services that they provide, especially on promoting Malaysian companies outside, it makes Malaysia just a perfect hub to grow for any companies that's based here.
Okay, so Sudev, we've been on an exercise of mutual admiration the last few minutes, right? But you work for IDC and you're supposed to offer balanced research, and you sit in Indonesia, so you might have a more balanced point of view. Well, I guess from an ASEAN standpoint, right? Every country in ASEAN will have internet companies, will have digital agencies like MDEC, right? On a comparative basis, where does Malaysia stand on this scale in terms of enablers versus say like a Vietnam or like an Indonesia, for example? Not directly to Singapore necessarily, but to these other like kind of like frontier economies.
Sure. I'm wondering how candid you want me to be about this. And I think many people know our stand around this. Honestly, what Johary said is very, very valid. MDEC and digital agencies in Malaysia, uh, the amount of programs, the type of programs, the amount of assistance far outdoes its Southeast Asian counterparts. Now, there are two ways to look at that. You can see that as positively to help the organizations, but you can also see that as a crutch for the organizations. And I think for the past couple of years, the unfortunate scenario was that the bill over 20 years for just say you talk about MSc, well, it's a fantastic initiative. However, I think the dependency of the programs or the grants was very large. And by having that dependency, and then you look across into Indonesia, or you look into a few other countries in Southeast Asia, the acceleration on innovation was a lot faster simply because it is their money. And there's more concerns when I'm putting in my own money to try to achieve something. Now, this is not, again, there are two ways to look at that. While the assistance is required, again, you went to the topic around SMBs. SMB IT spending in Malaysia is about $1 billion US, 1.2 billion US dollars. But what exactly are they spending on? They are spending on that laptop. They are spending on connectivity services, most of them. Are they spending on something more innovative? Are they doing something to try to transition their organization? Unfortunately, no, because they're living day to day. So that point of innovation, unfortunately, does disappear when there's a few too much of that. So I think the progression now, if you look in Malaysia, has been the movement away from just blind incentives into very outcome-based incentives. And I think that's what has me excited about the Malaysian landscape and the assistance available now.
Okay, so taking what you said on board, 2020 is kind of like an anomalous year because of COVID-19, right? And we've seen a lot of countries around the world ask governments for help and bailouts because of the pandemic. And that inherently is a challenge for the private sector, because there's one thing to say digital transformation, it's one thing to say reskilling, but the money's got to come from somewhere, right? So it's not all plain sailing. So from your perspective, Chee, right, you say that companies need to transform, they need to upskill. Where is the money coming from, and how are they paying for it?
Yeah. Yes, I think it's a tough question to answer. I think during this period of time, yes, I think most of the affected enterprises they're facing the financial issues. Definitely, we need some push from the government to help them. So I think today we have seen that there are so many programs that is released by the MDEC, by SME Bank, and also many other agencies has actually come up with the substitution plan to help the SME. So it's important that the affected SME will tap on these resources. But again, more importantly, is about how SME themselves have the vision to transform. I think that is more important. Secondly, is about what are the tools that they can use. So I think in terms of the tools and best practice, so this is the way where Huawei we can contribute as well. So that's why we work closely with the SME Corp, with PCOM SME Association, to trying to reach and using our solution and experience so that we can reach out to more SMEs that need help. So those are the initiatives that currently we are ongoing. and trying to work with many of the government agency and association, and also the industry player, and trying to offer our help where technology can support them.
Yeah, Joe, when you compare Forest Interactive to Huawei and Dassault Systems, it's a little bit like David and Goliath, right?
Yes,
So you're founder, but you're also operator. How are you dealing with the challenges of this COVID year?
well, I think for us it has been a good year. Of course, generally speaking, that's not something that you want to really shout about. Challenges has always been for us. One of the key barriers is always internet access, consumer trust, payments, logistics, and talent. However, this year, post or during the MCO, or even post COVID-19, we've seen a significant progress on most of those fronts, payment especially, and consumer trust. People don't travel so much outside, so you have less distortion, and there's more focus on one single thing, which is either your device or your TV screen. So it's been notoriously challenging for us before, but now everyone's on a mobile device, and it's just a challenge of converting a mobile user to a paying mobile user. And as Southeast Asia is mobile first, we may expect this to be low at first, but however, as the education comes in, we see that we have a fair advantage here rather than before, where there was a lot of logistics involved. So of course we are probably a small dot compared to to what Huawei is, but I think on the digital front, we're seeing this tilt towards a more fair competition between we see the big boys out there, as well as tech companies which are which are digitally savvy, and then looking at how you can explore that market.
Yeah, Joe, from the consumer standpoint, right? And you say ASEAN is a mobile market first. That's true, but the latest bunch of smartphones from Huawei, Apple, Samsung. I mean, these phones can get up to 5,000-6,000 ringgit, and that's a lot of money for people who don't have jobs necessarily at this time of year. And then of course there's also internet speeds, right? The faster you go, the more your infrastructure's got to cope. Is that an impediment?
Yes, definitely. If you look at the different generation gaps, especially with the Gen Ys and the Gen Z, so mobile is the answer to everything, right? You need a fast internet speed. Everyone wants a piece of 5G, and of course there's a lot of complaints saying when it's going to come in, but it's not as simple as that. And when you have that, it seems from their point of view, that enables me to do more and more things. I have to be on, say, Instagram or social media. I have to have my own page. I must have my own CV somewhere on LinkedIn. So that changes a lot as compared to how it's been done traditionally. So mobile will still continue to be a big factor. And we've seen before the COVID-19, Malaysians spend an average 3.7 hours online from a mobile phone, and then after that kind of spiked up to another hour, 4.8 hours. And I think the next few years we're going to see that increase more. Whether it's healthy or not, that's a different discussion. But what I can imagine is that there'll be more uptake on adoption of services from your mobile phone. So businesses have got to pivot really fast, and we've seen that in the past 6 months. There will be an interesting ride for the next few years, especially on the digital front.
That ride is never smooth. So from Thai, I mean, your business is so wide-reaching, right? You've also told me that transformation takes time, it takes money, it needs a cultural change, especially among the younger, especially among the older folk like myself. From your standpoint, right, at Dassault, where are the obstacles to this transformation that we talk about every day?
Yeah. So that's So the question is, where do I start? But before that, let me give some some credit to Joe, because you mentioned David and Goliath, right? So I would like to defend Joe a little bit. In many ways, we are envious of the environment that the companies that Joe is in. Well, you can compare David and Goliath and the size of things and everything, but sometimes we forget that the amount of speed, agility that because it's a service, because it's not very consumer based, the amount of agility that they have. I mean, 100% out there, right? With our customer base, with our industries, it takes sometimes years to accomplish that. So in that sense, I'm very envious. Back to your question. I think when we talk about digital transformation, we focus a little bit too much on digitization. I would like to, again, take a step back and help everybody realize that digital transformation means that digitalization is the means. It's the method, it's a tool to do things. The key is in transformation. Without just digitalizing, without transformation, is just a waste of money, it's a waste of time, right? And what we try to do, and especially now in challenging times where you know the financials are tight, you know the workforce is tight, there's all kinds of constraints. What we typically try to do, especially these days, is to work together with, to empower, to partner with industry players, leaders, business corporations, to, before we talk about what we're going to do tomorrow and where we're going to make money, let's first define a roadmap, a vision for the next 5 to 10 years. I completely can align with Chee Siong here. First, we figure out where we want to be in 5 years, in 10 years, right? And then we can work together. We can then define and handpick let's say the biggest bang for the buck, so the short-term ROIs, but we work towards that end transformation. I think it's very dangerous just to jump into a bandwagon. Okay, let's just digitalize everything, right? Let's go. Because then before you know it, it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money, right? So you need to really be sure where you want to go to before you take the first step.
Okay. Chee Siong, we've got a few minutes left, so can you spend 2 minutes to answer a question from the audience, okay? Asking, what can Malaysia do to empower new talent and to empower a new, kind of like a rejuvenated digital R&D hub in the country?
So from a talents development, I think if we are predicting what is required in the next 5 to 10 years, I think the talents that having the experience in the software development that is relevant to artificial intelligence. So I think AI will be becoming a very common general technologies that will be applying to most of the hardware, software, and ecosystem. So we are in Malaysia, we are really lacking of that kind of skills. So when it comes to software development, when it comes to AI relevant skill set and talents, we are very lacking on that. So I think we need to beef up on this area. For Huawei this year, we have done with quite a few of university in Malaysia that we work together to develop some AI relevant courses for their students. We are providing some of the AI edges, AI boxes that the student can actually doing some coding to develop AI use cases that's relevant. So I think that is important, and that is where we could contribute from a domain, starting with the education, especially the universities. So I think that is one area that from Huawei perspective, we highly recommend that AI will be the spot for our talent and skill set development.
Okay, we've got about 3 odd minutes left. So just as the first word belonged to you, Sudev, the last word also belongs to you, because you've got this helicopter view of the region, and I guess more than anybody else, you've got kind of like pinpoint accuracy, or somewhat pinpoint accuracy, as to each of our 10 countries in the region. Let's have a bit of a kind of like view to the future, right? What does it look like for ASEAN's digital market? Maybe 1 year's time, 3 years' time, even 5 years' time. Well, what does your intel tell us?
Well, the digital crystal ball, I guess we're going to call it, isn't it? So what our crystal ball is showing us is that the pandemic has definitely spelled the need for transformation. That's a given, number one. And I think if we look at our data going into next year, we are going to talk about majority of organizations are broken out into halves. And the thirds, really. So thirds at 33% who are really going to invest in putting a stop to what the pandemic has caused. There's 33% of them who are going to continue whatever transformative projects they've had. And then you're going to get those who are going to invest further into what is required by their enterprise into the future. What I'm going to say is it's very important for organizations to break things into horizons. If you're going to, I apologize for that. That's the perils of working at home. But if you are going to invest, what is going to be critical is for you to really be able to invest in what you require now, and then what you require in 3 to 5 year horizon, and ultimately in the 10 years is your moonshot ideas for innovation. Going back to what Ty said, transformation is the key, and that's truly what it has to be achieved. And we think that next year, 2021, is going to spell a little bit more of an uptick. Investments are going to return, a new normal will be reached, and we're a bit optimistic about the future, especially with organizations now coming to the idea that we are going to be within a prolonged pandemic over the next 6-month period, and therefore we are going to actually have to find different ways to work and operate with our business.
Sudev, just to drill down very quickly, right? Because ASEAN is notoriously a multi-speed region. Some countries are way ahead on the digital curve, and some countries aren't. But those countries that aren't are also building and developing at breakneck speeds. Where is the best country, or where is the best market, and where's the best industry to be in as kind of like a growth center for the next 1 to 3 years?
Sorry, was that to me? I thought you were asking somebody else. Where are the growth centers? Oh, Siong, go ahead.
Okay, Siong.
Yeah, maybe I will give 2 areas. So through our study, so we think that Malaysia can really excel and lead in the region in 2 domains. Actually, it's three domains. So the first one is we are talking about Islamic fintech. So Malaysia has a very unique cultures and environment and talents to lead in terms of actually not only the ASEAN, but the global when it comes to Islamic products, Islamic e-commerce, Islamic fintech. So on the Islamic domain, and this is where Malaysia can really excel and lead, not only ASEAN, but the global market. The second area that we could lead or leapfrog in the ASEAN market is on the manufacturing. When you talk about, because everyone is talking about Industry 4.0 evolution, but you need to have that manufacturing capacity in order to transform and able to lead. So within the ASEAN region itself, I think Malaysia, we have that good foundation. We have one of the largest manufacturer in the globe, top globe, and we have Proton, a Malaysian, and we have Proton, the 2 Malaysian locally brand that no other country in the ASEAN region has. So we have Proton, we have Top Group, we have many other manufacturing capacity in the different state. So I think when it comes to manufacturing industry evolution, we could excel and lead in that space. This is where we can, if we divert our investment, if we use all the right technology, we can lead in that space, and we can become a consultant to other countries that we can export our knowledge, our talents, our solution using Malaysian ecosystem.
Okay.
So the third area that could be excel, it would be the creative content, because creative content doesn't come from natural resource. It comes from talents. It comes from human minds. So creative content will be the third area that we think that we could excel, because we have that multicultural, very rich cultural elements in Malaysia. So if I would recommend, that would be the 3 areas that I think we can really play well. Yeah.
Okay, that was a fantastic wrap up, Siong, and of course Ty, and of course Joe, and of course Sudev. Thank you all for your points of view from your different industries and next neck of the woods. I think we've run out of time, so I'm going to pass it back to Brian and Pravina. Thank you all, gentlemen, for your time and your insights. Very good and very honest.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chuang, and also to the speakers for an energizing and animated discussion, as well as to the audience. Now it's 4+ this afternoon. Thank you very much for your attention and your time. Now we will now be moving forward to our next session, and it will begin shortly. Now, please click Join Session.